Hello, everybody. So today I'm going to introduce you to the photo editor that we're going to be using all semester. It's called Photopea.com. And this is really kind of great because when you're not at school or you don't have access to expensive software like Adobe Photoshop, this is a free browser-based editing tool. And so you can always have access to it. It gets a little annoying because there's commercials over here to the right, but once you kind of get used to it, you'll realize how great it is. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the photographs that we've taken. These are actually taken from the internet. They're not particularly great images. We're going to go to open, okay, because we already have something created. So I have 3 images that we're going to work on. So I'm going to open all 3 of them, but I'm going to start with this grist mill here in Vancouver. This is actually a beautiful photograph, but it could be edited just a little bit. I'm not crazy about things being super central and stable in the center of a picture. This is actually not so bad because we've got some leading lines and the bridge over here. But usually if you stick something right in the middle of the photograph, it tends to be a bit boring. So the first thing that I want you guys to do is crop it so that the grist mill is actually to the left side of the photograph. Okay, try to keep the same proportions that the photograph already has. So think about a photograph that you hold in your hand. You don't want it to be too horizontal or too vertical. So here we go. I'm going to drop that. That feels good. If you don't like that, you can continue to pull at the corners and play with the proportions. Okay, but I'm going to hit enter. So we just cropped it. Now in my history, which we're going to use quite a bit, we see that it's been cropped. We use the crop tool. So if you want to use any of these tools, we're mostly going to use crop for today, but you'll notice that each tool that has multiple options has a triangle. So if you click or hit your mouse, you'll see that you have 2 options under that tool. Under the crop tool, you have lots of options, which we might get to this semester, but mostly we're going to be using crop. We're going to be using the spot tool today, so keep that in mind. And then other than that, we're going to come over here. This is our different layers. So each time you make a different move on your photograph, you're going to see that a different layer pops up. And that's why we're going to use this area over here for adjusting our brightness and contrast and vibrance and luminosity. Okay, so we have our photograph. It's pretty good, but we're going to use this little kind of almost looks like a yin-yang or a half white, half black circle. That brings up these different layers where we're going to adjust the brightness. So the first thing I would suggest you do is always check the brightness of your photographs. Most of you guys tend to start with an underexposed or dark photograph. So sometimes you just need to bump up the brightness. Sometimes it can be overexposed, and so you need to actually bump down the brightness. So this looks like it could be bumped up just a tad. And then with that, you don't want to lose your shadows and your kind of dark areas. So you want to bump up the contrast just a bit. Contrast can get really extreme. Like that is very extreme. We don't want that. So you just need to bump up the contrast a little bit. Okay. All right. So then you'll see that the computer automatically added a new layer. So if you want to, you can go back to the other layer and then back again, and you can kind of start to see what's been going on. This also is the history, so you can go from your edited adjustments to the old adjustment layer, okay, and see if you like the before or after, okay. So then one more little move that we're going to make is under the vibrance section. And we are going to adjust over here the vibrance, and that just kind of increases the richness of the tones. And this will increase the saturation of the color in the photograph. And again, you can go way too far. So just be very subtle. make it look just a little bit better, maybe just a little bit more vibrant. And again, go back to your old image to see if you like the new ones better. Okay, and I do. So we're going to save that. And what we would do, oops, if you ever make a move you don't want to do, go Control Z and that undoes what you did. Okay, so now if you want to export, you're going to export as a JPEG. We're always going to use JPEG for photographs. And, we want the best quality, so you can bump that up. We want to make sure you can kind of see inches wise if you don't understand how big a pixel is. Okay, we just manipulated a bunch of pixels, but if you need to kind of understand what the printable size would be, this would be about almost a piece of paper, kind of a standard piece of printer paper. So, and then you'll want to attach your metadata and save it, okay? And we can do that in our file, and you can always open up your file and you can rename it if you want to, so that you know that it's the edited version. Of course, you guys are going to be doing this in okay. All right, so I'm going to show you one more technique. So all of these, I want you to crop, increase the brightness or lessen the brightness, increase the contrast, work with the luminosity and the vibrance. But this, I want to show you one new tool, okay? So you need things to go out of your way here. So if you need to see more of the image just to see where to crop, do you see this dark band at the top? So this is just like a Google photo from the internet. It's not a very good photo. Remember, in real life, you would never use someone else's photos. We're just using this to practice with. So first thing I'm going to do is crop this image so that that dark band is not as obvious. Okay. And for the moment, I'm just going to go ahead and keep the Google sign so I can show you how to fix that. Okay, I'm going to enter. We're going to get a nicer proportion here. We got rid of most of that dark band, but we can get rid of more of it if you want to. Again, trying to keep the proportions of a photograph. All right, so now we're going to try using the spot healing tool, which is kind of an amazing little tool. You kind of want to be careful of going too far beyond what you're trying to spot remove. But you do, what happens is it matches to the tones around it. Okay, so you can just do a little bit at a time, and you can Control plus will kind of blow the picture up so you can kind of see closer to what you're doing. Okay, so you can kind of get rid of different things in the picture. You can go a little bit too far on things because, if you really have a very crisp and not very textural image, it can really make things look kind of funny. Like right here, it already makes it look just slightly blurred out. But it is something that if you have a really beautiful photograph and it's just totally kind of ruining things, this is a good way to get rid of like spots and different very distracting elements. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do one more thing, which is to get rid of the power line up here just to kind of show you. I didn't get rid of all of it, so you're going to have to go back a couple times. So again, you can kind of overdo it with this, so be very kind of careful and subtle with your moves. This might not have been the best move up here. But then you can also get rid of this shadow in the middle of the photograph too, because we don't have a power line anymore, so we shouldn't necessarily have the shadow. Okay. All right, so we've got a couple of new tools that we've used. At this point, this image is sadly lacking, so I would go over here and I would do the same moves that I did in my other photograph, which is to brighten things up a little bit. You know, allow some contrast to come in, but not too much. And then again, go back down here and work with the vibrance. So increase the vibrance, don't go overkill here. And then increase the saturation. This is a pretty bleached out space, mostly because it is kind of a bleached out environment, very sunny. But don't go too crazy because it will start to look too harsh and strange. But you do want to get those blues to come out a little bit more and those greens to come out a little bit more. Okay. All right. So you can kind of look and see how things looked before and after. Make sure that you like what you did. And then at this point, again, you're going to file. You're going to export as a JPEG. And then you're going to make sure the quality is super high as you can get it. You can check pixels versus inches, and you want to save all the metadata, because if that gets lost, it's hard for you to re-edit things in the future. All right, so you have 3 images to edit. I want you to crop, work on brightness, contrast. I want you to work on vibrance and saturation. And then for this image in particular, I want you to really work on that spot healing tool to see how you can get rid of distracting elements, okay, and get maybe a little bit better at that. Control plus and Control minus can adjust the view for you, and Control Z lets you kind of go backwards. So, but you can also use your history for that. All right, so once you practice that and turn those 3 images in to your Google Classroom when you're finished.